um, if you're new to this, I'm Just A Contrarian, or you can just call me by my name, Aman. Doesn't bother me. Um, this is a new, a new live stream. We're gonna have a brand new subject that we have not talked about previously. So let's do this today on Hump Day. Let's have all the smoke for me, for others, as long as it's on topic. Let's have the political discussion. It's been simmering in the background for a long time. Let's have the discussion. I've made videos on political figures and criticized many of them heavily, especially on the Democratic side, which is, I think, rather apt for me because from the, I originally come from the left side of politics. That's why I see the most problems with it, just being disgruntled with how they operate. And I decided not to do that anymore. So let's have the political debate. We can talk Democrats versus Republicans. We can talk Biden versus Trump. We can talk um, all of that stuff. So let's have the political debate today, guys. Let's have all the smoke. All the folks who've come onto the channel previously and interrupted talking about Trump 2024 or Biden 2024. Let's hear it out, guys. Let's hear your views on it. Let's see what you think about these things. I already know where I stand, and people who've watched my content before know where I stand, but I don't have any problem airing my views here in their entirety. I've aired my views in previous videos, not so much the live streams, but in my pre-recorded videos and in my YouTube shorts. I've made pretty good. I've been pretty clear about where I stand on many issues, but we can have it out about all of them here. Um, so I don't know you, Frank Shadley, but um, for me to subscribe, I can't subscribe to your channel while I'm currently on a live stream. And there has, if you want me to do so, then there has to be some sort of mutual benefit for me as well. Yeah, Tony, we're not talking about dumb shit like that. So again, this is the political debate, guys. Anything you want to get off your chest politically, whether you're for Biden, good. Tell us why. If you're for Trump, good. Tell us why. If you are completely politically apathetic, tell us why. If you want to get a third party candidate like RFK Jr., good. Tell us why. Um, and there's other third party candidates from the Green Party, the Reform Party, um, um, independents. Let's hear it all. Um, Out of respect, some people didn't air their grievances with the government and the military on my Monday string because that was a day where I said let's just honor the fallen heroes regardless of you know how we feel currently about the government or some aspects of the military which are definitely problematic. And most people stuck by that. But afterwards people was like, well, there are some issues I have with the government and military, and that's completely fair. I just wanted to keep it lighthearted on that Monday because it was mostly just celebrating all the folks in the service who gave the ultimate sacrifice, and also talking about the holiday and what it means for some people. Like, for some people it might be looking for those Memorial Day sales. For others it might be having a nice family barbecue. For veterans it might be connecting with old friends they served with. all sorts of things. So that's, we try to keep it lighthearted Monday, but for the folks who have their grievances, let's hear it out. Um, See the Beauty says, how much? I don't know what you're referring to. But again, any sort of trolling, I'm going to ban people or time them out. If they've been to the channel before and they've trolled, I'm just going to ban them. Other folks, I always give one. I always let someone get one snipe, and after that, they're gone. So, like I said, I don't mind people making jokes and cracking jokes, whatever. That's cool. Just keep it relevant to the subject. People who have mental health issues go somewhere else. This is not your platform for you to seek attention or to ask me to give you some sort of armchair prognosis. I'm not doing that. This is not that. This is not for that. So I'm pretty sure most of those trolls who come here have been people who've been banned on numerous other platforms on this channel. I mean, on this website. So folks with mental health issues, whether you suffer somewhere on the schizophrenia spectrum, which is a wide spectrum of mental diseases, from people who merely display some schizotypal tendencies to folks who have like delusional disorders and paranoid this paranoia personality disorder, or schizotypical personality disorder, or full-blown schizophrenia in many of its forms. This is not for you to get help here. If you have those issues, get offline and go seek help. I won't be helping you, and I won't be considering any sort of questions or comments from people giving incoherent thoughts, because I get that too much on here from weirdos. Trust that when this channel is monetized and there's more moderation done in these live streams, some of you won't even be able to enter the live stream anymore, because you'll be automatically blocked. But for all the rational, normal people, you're more than welcome here. Give your opinions. Like I said, we're going to talk about political issues of every sort that people want to air. So this is the airing of grievances. you know so go ahead and tell us your political views, or why you are for one candidate or against the other candidate, or whatever. If you're a kid, Samantha, this is not for you. This is for adults. I'm sorry. I would suggest you go to a kid-friendly content. Hello, Chili Duck. This is a live stream about talking about political opinions with the current election. Who's people's candidate? Whom do they dislike? What are their grievances they have right now with the government, or do they favor what's going on with the government? All of that. And if you're asking me what state am I currently, uh, where I'm currently living is, I live in Maryland. Alex says both parties are the same. In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. That's why I'm an independent. I disagree with both of them. I think being one or the other is like the difference between being a Whig or a Tory, like in the old timey British sense. Oh, so you're from Maryland too? Okay. Uh, Alex says we are all screwed. Chili Duck says I'm visiting Kentucky, living in the VA in Virginia. politics wise, I lost hope when they ruined Bernie's chances. I feel you. I was a Bernie person myself both times, and I hated seeing him capitulate to the corporate candidate both times. Jeff VQ said, I didn't realize you were a commentator. I thought you were about to make sleep stream. Okay. No, I just have a lo-fi in the background for background music. Batman, who is obviously my favorite character. So I have some Batman lo-fi in the background, but this is not to put people to sleep. If it does put them to sleep, okay, I don't care. But yeah, this is for a political discussion because every time we have a live stream, I have a live stream rather, people, you know, come in with political comments. So let's just have an entire live stream of nothing but political comments, for, against, whom you like, whom you don't like, your problems with what's going on in the current events, whether you agree with what's going on in with uh, American foreign policy, American domestic policy, all that sort of thing. We can discuss all of those sorts of things, and only those things. Only politics today. Only politics. We're not talking about movies. We're not talking about comics. We're not talking about your mental health. We're not talking anything irrelevant. 7 Up official says hate from Texas. Hate from Texas? Elliot says FJB, no offense, but Joe has raised prices to live, but Trump is not great either. Yeah, I can see that. F Joe Biden. Got it. Sorry. Chili Rock says DNC screwed him. We can't lose hope. Something has to happen. Not necessarily. Something doesn't have to happen. Something may happen. I mean, we can look at the numbers coming from political polls and surveys now, which kind of make it all but certain that Biden is going to lose. I think the problem is too many people within his circle who aren't making him aware of just how tenuous his hold is on the White House. That numbers wise, he doesn't have the numbers to win the re-election. And I think the people around him are doing him a disservice by making him think that he has a good chance against Trump. The only chance he has against him is hoping that Trump can't run because of legal reasons. Jeff EQ says, my bad, buddy. Most lives I saw were a sleep stream, so let's talk politics. To be honest, I haven't even heard of a sleep stream, so I don't know what that is. Jari Sturkison is back. He says hello. Jeff VQ says, who don't you like and why, or who would you recommend? I would never recommend someone to other people. I can only say whom I like, because I'm not in a position to tell people whom they should vote for, whom they should vote. And even if I were in that sort of position, I still wouldn't do it because I find that sketchy. But whom I don't like is Joe Biden. And yes, people are going to ask, well, whom did you vote for in 2020? Yes, I did vote for Joe Biden. I kind of held my nose as I did it. Same thing with Hillary in 2016. And it basically came to me last year. I'm like, why should I continue holding my nose for candidates that I hate just because I've been scared into thinking that the big orange man is so much scarier? I'm done with that. So I'm voting for the scary big orange man this coming election. Chili Duck says, so tell me how you feel about my statement. I'm a Bernie guy, but with the economy in its state, as much as I disagree with a lot of Trump standings, is it bad to vote for him if it helps the economy? Well, those are several statements, so I'm not sure which one you're referring to. I'm not gonna say how I feel. I go by how I think, not about how I feel. As a man, I don't go by my feelings. I go by what I think. But what I think is that the Democrats have been playing the boogeyman, like, has been playing every Republican candidate as the boogeyman against uh, people of color, particularly Black and Indigenous people, to say, oh, if you elect this guy, they're gonna basically put you guys back in chains and all this sort of stuff. But the fact of the matter is, it was fucking Joe Biden whose 1994 crime bill put tens of thousands of black men in jail, in prison, and some of them are still rotting in prison to this day. This man has been running for election since the 80s. He ran way back in '88 and had to drop out of the election because of claims that he lied about his college education, that he was accused of I think some plagiarization when he was in law school, and some other problems back in 1988. But he's been running for president since like 40 years ago. He's been in the Senate since the 70s. And it's funny that for black men who do want to vote for Trump, either they support Trump outrightly or they're just tired of the Democrats. Frankly, I'm both. I'm in support of Trump and I'm tired of the Democrats. They try to write us off as sellouts or misinformed when that's far from the truth. If anything, we know way too much about the Democratic candidate, which turns us off. Like, again, Joe Biden has been in electoral politics since the 70s, maybe the late 60s, but definitely the 70s. He's lied about his educational background. He was in he he opposed desegregation of schools. He prided himself with working across the congressional aisles to work with people like Strom Thurmond, a vocal white supremacist. He eulogized Robert Byrd, a fucking KKK leader, at his death. One of our places at my alma mater, University of Maryland, was actually named after Robert Byrd. It was the Byrd Stadium, which has been renamed, thankfully so. But he eulogized that man, a KKK leader. Like I said, he co-authored the 1994 crime bill. He was part of he worked with the Clintons, who then called black men super predators, and did that whole stupid thing with the coke versus crack thing, where the same amount of crack cocaine for a black or a Latino person possessing it would give them way much more prison time than the same amount in powdered cocaine for a white person. He made false promises during his campaign back in 2020. Not only did he promise that he would reduce student loan debt for people who have federal student loans, he promised students of HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, that he would wipe out all their student loan debt. So not only he did try the student loan debt for all American students, but he completely reneged on that promise to HBCUs, and no one called him out on it. He went on that morning show with Charlemagne the God and basically told black people that if they have any confusion about whom they should vote for, then they're simply not black. If they don't vote for a man who worked with white supremacists, co-authored the 1994 crime bill, which is why I call him I don't call him like Sleepy Joe or Genocide Joe or whatever. I have other names for him. But in any case, Black people who are voting for Trump are not misinformed. They're pretty well informed, and they're just pretty much tired of Democrats. So, yes, DSC, we are talking politics. Pierre LaFou says Project 2025 is insane. I don't know what that is. CC Motion 1998 said, "What's up? What's the topic? Politics, my friend." DRC says, "I recommend Nick Fuentes." No, we're not recommending white supremacists. Plus, I won't be talking about people who've been kicked off of the YouTube platform. You, if highlight people who've been kicked off the YouTube platform, that's a good way to get demonetized yourself. Happen to Fresh and Fit and Pearly things. Those stupid motherfuckers. Pedro says, "Hey, I know who you are. You are a war machine for Marvel. You are Iron Man's best black friend. I don't look a motherfucking thing like him." Jerry Sturkison says, "I don't want my kids to live in a concrete jungle." So Judge Joe Brown, I don't know if you guys ever watched Judge Joe Brown on TV when he used to be on, he's like Judge Judy and all those other little court shows, right? He's he was recently on a podcast saying that he met Joe Biden back in the 80s when he first was running for for the office of president. And he was saying the man used to say a bunch of racist stuff back then, which I have no doubt, really. Not to mention, like, his little war on drugs seemed to be wholly absent with his crackhead son. Like, I wish I could have got kicked out of the army and then got a cushy executive job on a board of some corporation in Europe for doing absolutely nothing but having a prestigious last name. How do I look like The Rock? So I'm gonna give you guys all one snipe, and then again you're gonna be off. Stop comparing me to every single fucking black person you fucking know. I will kick you off this fucking channel. You will never be on this motherfucking channel again. Cindy Prim said, "Did you vote for Obama?" No, but that's only because I didn't vote at all at that time. But yes, I was for him. And I'm glad, in retrospect, I'm glad that I didn't vote for him because, at the time we was like, oh, he's going to be our first black president and so forth. He's not even really black. As if people haven't caught my videos I've made in the past with a friend of mine, we often talk politics while sitting in his car driving on our way to the gym or somewhere. And we've both agreed Obama's just a tether. He's not really black. His father was a Kenyan immigrant. His mother was a white chick from the Midwest. He grew up his entire life in Hawaii and for a little while in Indonesia when his mother remarried an Indonesian man. He didn't step foot on mainland United States until he went to college, and even then he never commingled with black American people until after he graduated from Columbia University and became a community activist in the city of Chicago. That's the first time he actually ever really mingled with black people, and when he met Michelle Obama. Yeah. And probably the only reason he became a community activist at that time was basically just to pad his resume to go on to Harvard Law. So no, I didn't vote for him, but yeah, at the time I was very ecstatic for him, but I realized that he was fugazi. Cindy Prim says he keeps trying to do that, but the Republicans blocked it in the House. I'm not sure what you're talking about. But she says you don't have any idea what you're talking about. Braden is gone. Get the fuck off my channel. Bonnie Bell says Biden was notorious when I was growing up as racist. Okay, so yeah, like I said, I've heard these stories too. It's just that there's no independent source of it, so I can't say for sure. But the stories he said about like when he grew up and his stories about fighting some black guy named Corn Pop when he was at a swimming pool in Delaware and all this other stuff sounds kind of weird. He said my Bonnie says my parents couldn't stand him. He is the reason both my parents left the Dems. My dad couldn't understand why he was in the position he was in. Because Delaware is not like a it's not like a blue state. They were more like Dixiecrats, I think. Cage says hi. What's up, Cage? Frumpy amid 5T word project says Trump didn't want black people renting his apartments. Okay, but again, that's as a private citizen. That's not as a government official. And I wish people stop making that dubious comparison. Like those are the two things people try to use as examples of Trump being racist. Let's face it, both Biden and Trump are from the silent generation. Those are people born during or before World War II, before 1946, are people born of the silent generation. Are they going to have some racist beliefs? Yeah, obviously. They were born in the 40s or 30s. But Trump refusing to rent his apartments to black people, or him putting out that famous editorial about the 5 kids that were accused of assaulting a woman back in the 90s, that was as a private citizen. That wasn't as a government official. So he didn't do anything deleterious to black people as a private citizen. Whereas, and I emphasize that purposely 3 times, Joe Biden as a senator, not as a private citizen, as a senator, did do deleterious things to black people. 1, by working against desegregation. 2, by working with white supremacists. 3, by co-authoring the 1994 crime bill which sent tens of thousands of black men to prison. That has real effects. Not someone saying they didn't want to rent their apartments to someone in New York City when there's other places you could rent from, not just Trump. And or the whole thing about him writing an editorial saying that they need to put those 5 kids in prison who didn't do what they were accused of back then, and that they should receive the death penalty or whatever. He did it as a private citizen. He didn't do that as a politician. So it's disanalogous, and I'm tired of little simp ass black people trying to use that point. It doesn't work. Let's see. Someone refusing someone rent at an apartment or writing a nasty racist editorial compared to someone who locked up tens of thousands of black people on petty charges. Not the fucking same. I don't know who Louis Van Gaal is, Jari. From Pyramid says Republican and Democrats are helping black people. I don't know. Is that a question? Oh. Jerry says, just kidding. I don't know who that person is anyway, so I wouldn't know. Rowan Noah says, Habibi, come to Dubai. I will buy you 19 camel. Come up with better jokes. At least if you get banned, at least get banned for a good joke. Because you're gone. Big Mike Obama. Yeah. I mean, come on. She looks manly as fuck. She's not cute. I'm sorry. Anyway. But he says, I read articles about his time in Hawaii. He was something there. Yeah, he was smoking weed and doing coke. So he he didn't know black people in Hawaii. They aren't black people in Hawaii. The most black people you see in Hawaii are stationed there in the military. After he lived with his mom, she got married to an Indonesian man that he spent several years in Indonesia, so much so that he learned the language. If folks don't remember, he actually, as president, when he went to Indonesia as a visit, he was actually speaking to them in the local Bahasa and Indonesian language. And then when his mother died, his grandparents took care of him. So he's never had any contact with the black community. So I don't even consider him the first black president. He's just a tether to me. If you guys you guys can look up tether if you don't know what that means. But it basically means someone who's of African ancestry but wasn't part of the black American community, but has derisive things to say about the black American community. So that's what a tether is, and that's what Obama is. And so is Kamala Harris. She's also a tether. Her father was Jamaican. Her mother was Indian. She, um, she's not black. She's a tether. She locked up a lot of black people as a state prosecutor in California, and now then wanted to claim later on that she's a progressive. No, she's not. GP number 23 says, "Do all Americans think universal health care is socialism?" No. Um, People on the left are definitely in favor of universal health care. And there's people, and actually, some people think all Republicans are against universal health care. That's not true. The healthcare system that Obama pushed through during his term in office, he actually modeled after what Senator not McConnell, what was the guy named, the Mormon dude from Vegas, I mean from Nevada, um, who actually ran against him. Let me look that up really quick. I forget people's names sometimes, but it's to be expected. Romney, yeah, that's what I forgot. But yeah, when Mitt Romney ran against him, it was used against him that the Obama healthcare system that the president was pushing at the time was modeled on Mitt Romney's system that he had when he was governor of Massachusetts, I think. Jerry Sturgeson says Dixiecrat. So yeah, so let me explain. So one of the things the black Republicans often bring up is that black people were Republicans way before they were majority Democrats. That's because Republicans were the party of Lincoln, the party that freed them from bondage. They didn't start becoming skewed towards the Democrats until like things like with FDR, federal, Franklin D. Roosevelt, his New Deal, and then with Kennedy, and then later Lyndon B. Johnson succeeded him, pushing through the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which became law in 1965, as well as the Voting Rights Act. That is what's pushed a lot of black people into the Democratic side, but formerly most were Republicans, and most Democrats were heavily in the South, and most of them were pretty conservative and pretty racist back then. And they still are. Like, there's still large chunks of the Democratic base still based in the Deep South that still hold those conservative and racist leanings. And now they're sometimes referred as Dixiecrats. That's where that term comes from. I don't know what you are talking about, JDT93. Obviously, you haven't heard all of this in its entirety. If you think I'm talking about playing victim, I'm talking about quite the opposite. Unless you're referring to someone else in the in the comment thread. J.A.C. Well, I'm not going to repeat that. Mercanoid peanut butter is back. Came back with some spice. I see. I'm not going to repeat that either. So I know I'm further up in the comment section, so I'm pretty sure Jari got my explanation of what a Dixiecrat is. Thanks, Frank. Yep, Mitt and Romney. What do I think about reparations? So I'm for it. Cash reparations. I don't want to hear any little other things like, yeah, we can give them reparations, but only as X, Y, and Z. No, cash reparations. But I'm also thinking that part of those cash reparations should come from Africa itself, from all those African uh, nations that were formerly kingdoms that were involved in selling off their brethren to the through the transatlantic slave trade. Point of order, there's still slavery going on in the continent of Africa. Like slavery was just big time business for them. They 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 made war and enslaved people, sent them across the transatlantic. They enslaved people and sent them through the Arabic slave trade. They even caught white people and sold them along the Barbary coast. But yeah, so for what they owe Black Americans, I think cash reparations can come from both ends. As far as expecting these cash reparations from America, I don't know. But I think Africa owes it first, because they couldn't have slaves here if the Africans didn't sell their brethren. So cash reparations should be coming from them first. And if they really wanted Black Americans to come back to the continent, they would make it more favorable with all sorts of lucrative business and trade, not to mention the African continents within the AU, the African Union, which is like 47 of the 50 current nations there. They could uniformly pass a law of return, just as Israel has for people within the Jewish diaspora. People of the Black African diaspora can have a law of return to the continent of Africa through all the countries that take part in the AU. So that's how I feel about that. Jari says someone's read about the Barbary War. Slavery was a constant in every facet of human history. So yeah, I'm quite well aware of it. Not to mention that the word slavery itself comes from the Slavs, the Slavic people who were made peasants and servants within Eastern Europe and Central Asia. That's where the word slave comes from. Fried Tendy says you should marry. I don't know who KCO is. I'm already married, and if that's some sort of joke, I don't get it. Mercanoid Peanut Butter says, what are your opinions on Marcus Garvey? I have very mixed feelings. Well, I think he was a fraud. I think he took advantage of Black people with his whole movement to go back to Africa. I think it was a scam. Did he have some good points that he made? Yeah, because Marcus Garvey is sort of the founder of Afrocentrism and the Black Power movement and all of that. And I vehemently disagree with the Black Power movement and Afrocentrism. And it's like, if you start a movement on a shaky foundation, then that foundation is never going to be something that will probably work. And I think that's Marcus Garvey's legacy. He may have made some good, solid points, but he was a bit of a confidence man. Iron Sheik says, Sheiky says we should take reparations from Hulk Hogan. He should fund them himself. Okay. From Pyramid says they became slaves themselves, which is why from 1868 to 1991, every African country has an Independence Day. Who were they independent from? That was about it. That argument is weak. No, it's not. Literally, Dennis Sperling, the attorney, gave a very good argument, and I think you're just being disingenuous because this is not something new. But Dennis Sperling has well thought out and meticulated why African nations owe Black Americans reparations. They were the ones who enslaved them and sold them either to the Arabs or to Europeans. And just talking about where did they get the independence from, they were not owned by any European countries at the time that they were putting their brothers in bondage. These were African kingdoms, like the fucking Dahomey kingdom, which they tried to glorify in that little shitty ass movie last year with the whole women king bullshit. They were African kingdoms. None of them were colonized at the time within the 1600s and 1700s, 1500s, 1400s. It was around the 1800s that these kingdoms became colonized. But at the time that they were enslaving, making war upon each other, and then selling these people in bondage to Arabs and Europeans, they were not colonies of Europe. So your argument is bullshit. I know history. Jerry Sturkinson says my people served under serfdom until the 1870s. Nick Ireland says, what's the conversation? I just popped in. Politics, Nick. So everything we're talking about, what politician people dislike, what politicians people like, whom they're voting for in the coming elections, whether it's local, state, or federal level, what they, if they disagree with the current geopolitics that's going on and other current affairs, do they care about the current trials that Trump's involved in? Do they believe Joe Biden is doing a good job as president? And all of that sort of stuff. So anything political, that's what we're talking about. Bonnie says, if our government can send money to other countries and help the people coming in, I feel like government at this point should give reparations. Just make sure the money goes to Black Americans. I agree. Like they're giving money away to illegal migrants, people coming over the border illegally. When there is a legal immigration process and there's a refugee process as well. And they're pushing these people into the inner cities where the Black people currently live to compete for space, and giving them a housing allowance and food, stuff that they don't even give to the people living there who deserve it, but they're going to give it to illegal migrants. So Nick says, yeah, but reparations wouldn't be fair to the immigrants who came here after slavery. We don't give a fuck about immigrants who came here after slavery. The key word is slavery. Those immigrants weren't slaves. This is reparations for slavery. Do you get that? We don't care about what other people have gotten. And point of the matter is, other people have already received reparations. After the Japanese internment, Japanese received reparations for that. Indigenous people have received reparations in different forms from both tribal governments. Members of tribal governments receive an allowance through their tribal governments getting federal funding, not to mention the casinos they're allowed to operate, which aren't legal in most states, but it's legal on tribal land. Or they can set up payday lending companies, which is not allowed in most states. The Jewish people were receiving reparations after World War II. Not only that, we sent reparations to the country of Germany afterwards as well. Um, so what you're saying doesn't make sense. People who came here as immigrants came here willingly, Nick. So why would they receive reparations? That doesn't make sense. Why would someone receive reparations for willingly coming here? We're talking about people brought here in bondage and their work being the backbone of what built the country. So, in any case, like I said, I think a huge amount of that should start with African continent themselves, because they were the first ones to involve themselves in the slavery of their brethren. So, Bonnie says there's 2 African countries, I believe, that apologize for slavery. They can apologize, but they need to apologize with some money. We don't want apologies. We want we want results. Like I said, I think that the Homie Kingdom is now in the modern day country of, is it Benin? Benin? I think that's where I think that's where the Dahomey Kingdom is, in the modern country of Benin. But in any case, not only that, Dennis Sperling in one of his live streams even showed showed documentation showing that there were, after the transatlantic slave trade was outlawed here in the U.S., which I believe was in 1860, there was still slavery going on. No, I'm sorry. So I think it was before 1860. I'm not sure. I don't want to make up false dates. But after the transatlantic slave trade was made illegal in Europe and America, slavery was still legal here, but they weren't allowing people to be brought across the oceans anymore. But they were at least 2 notorious slave ships that came here afterwards, still bringing people in bondage, which was against international and American law at the time, from a few African countries, which gives us a starting point for where we could target that reparations against these African kingdoms, former African kingdoms, which then became republics later on in the 1960s. Charlie Ferguson, it's cool to see a black guy without being affected by cultural Marxism and thinks for himself. I don't think too many black guys are into cultural Marxism. Like, people on the left, sure, might, but we don't. Even amongst the left, Marxists are considered like extreme. Like, there's a lot of black people who are liberal, maybe progressive, but they're not Marxists. I think you gotta understand, Jerry. Like, politics here and in Europe aren't the same. Leftists in Europe are way more extreme than leftists are in America, although America is starting to catch up. Like I said, most people are somewhat moderately on the left, but not that far on the left like Marxists are. Nick says, yeah, we shouldn't be giving away money to non-Americans. I agree on that. Exactly. They're not Americans. They came here illegally. A lot of them are committing crime. Our U.S.-Mexican border is a joke. A lot of our foreign adversaries are pushed through their operatives through that U.S.-Mexican border disguised as Latino migrants. So we know that through our discussions in intel, that some of our adversaries are pushing in their operatives through the U.S.-Mexican border. So it's a national security issue as well. I already know that the Homie Kingdom became what it's now been, and I literally just said that in the chat. And I don't care what they pay France. I'm talking about what they are paying us. Let's keep it on task here. I don't give a fuck about what's going on in anywhere else. As we're talking about here in the U.S., they owe Black Americans reparations for, and they aren't the only ones, for enslaving and selling them to Europeans who then brought them across the Atlantic Ocean through the transatlantic slave trade. And that's fine if they don't do it. That's cool. But when they come over here, they're not welcome to they're not welcome into the black community. Full stop. They will be considered those people. They won't be considered black people. Not by foundational black Americans. You're not a foundational black American if you're not someone whose ancestry can be tied back to black people brought here before 1860. Nick Ireland says, no, why should the immigrants pay? Because if they're white immigrants, then they kept, well, first of all, citizens aren't paying. The government is paying. That's number one. Two, as far as you're talking about them being, if you're referring to them as taxpayers, if you're part of this country, then you pay your taxes like everyone else. Well, get the fuck out. That's why. Once you became an American citizen, you pay American citizen taxes. Is that true or not? Anyway, so Jerry says slavery makes me feel disgusting regardless in which form. I agree. Nick Ireland says the post-slavery immigrants that are now U.S. citizens weren't slave owners. Is that what I? This is what I mean. Is I believed I phrased it wrong originally. That's not true. Everyone took part in slavery, including other black people. Other black people kept slaves in America. Indigenous people kept slaves, particularly those from the so-called 5 civilized tribes. The 5 civilized tribes are like the Cherokee, the Creek, the Chickasaw, and the other 2 I can't remember. But all of the so-called 5 civilized tribes, those folks kept slaves. White people kept slaves. There were some wealthy black people who kept slaves. There are people who came here, and there were people who came here as immigrants from parts of Europe that kept slaves, like the Scot-Irish folk. A lot of them settled in the American South and became slave owners. Jerry says, yep, been in 1610, just looked it up. Nothing else said, was bro yapping about. Just kidding. What we talking about though? So just politics. So like I said, it turned into a discussion about slavery. I'm not interested in it. I want to talk about current events right now, current affairs. What is people's favorite politician and stuff. So I'm gonna like start ignoring some of these comments about slavery because I'm not gonna be talking about American history, things that have already been known and decided long time ago, just because people have feelings about it. I don't care about feelings. I care about reasons. So anything you want to voice about current politics? Nothing. Jerry says, yeah, agree. Europe, we call most leftists or progressive Marxists. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not the same here. European politics and American politics aren't the same. What we consider liberals here, you guys would consider you would consider them on the right over there. Not talking about who won, Drake or Kendrick. That's stupid. Andrew was being put on timeout just because he's on some gay shit. Bonnie says, well, there were Europeans brought here under bondage, so to say, but it was under the 13 colonies, penal colony. So this has been a matter of history too, and then I'm gonna leave this whole slavery thing alone. Most of the white people brought here was through indentured servitude. They weren't brought here as slaves. Were there some that were enslaved? Yes, but they didn't make good slaves because once they escaped, they fit into mainstream society. Having a slavery system based on racial identity made it easier to keep those people as slaves, because obviously once they they ran away, they could be easily identified just by virtue of their their race, skin color, so forth. Same thing with Native Americans, tended not to be good for bondage as well, because again, they knew the land. So they became free, they could easily get away and stay away from slavers. Not to mention, they often did make good slaves because they often died of European diseases while in bondage. And again, yes, there were some white people who were enslaved, because of they were serving uh, some criminal punishment. But that's by and far the minority, and the majority of white folks who came here in servitude were indentured servants, not slaves. Nick Iron says, "What you're saying, Africa pay for reparations?" Absolutely, absolutely, I am. If they, you can't have black slaves if there weren't Africans willing to sell their own people into slavery in the first place to Europeans. So we start from the top. And like I said, if they right now, Africa is in a state of disarray, and a lot of these West African countries and some of these East African countries are trying to court Black Americans to come there and bring their their wealth with them to boost their economies back in the African continent. And I'm saying, if they really want to do that, then offer us reparations and offer us some sort of law of return, the way Israel offers with people of the Jewish diaspora. They have a law of return. The African Union, which is made up of 47 of the current 50 countries in the African continent, could institutionalize a law of return for people of Black American or Caribbean heritage. So yeah, I'm not saying that takes the United States off the hook, but I'm saying it should start with those African countries, definitely. Look, you guys can agree. You can SPHESIHLE says, "Nah, Unc. Don't just say no. Say why you disagree. That's what this stream is for. If you're gonna disagree with me, but tell me why you disagree. That's what I'm interested in today. Not just yes, no, maybe. Tell me why. Tell me why you disagree. Tell me what you agree with." A lot of Irish were not slaves. That's a myth. That's been debunked a long time ago. That's been debunked. That has been the most recurring counterpoint to African slavery. Is, oh, there was a lot of Irish slaves. No, they weren't. No, they weren't. A lot of them were. There were some who were indentured servants, yes, and there were some people who came here and then later had to serve prison terms in bondage. But by and large, there was not a huge influx of Irish slaves. That is a myth that's been debunked in history for the last 50 years. Bonnie says the two tribes, the Potawatomi and the Ojibwe. Well, the Ojibwe were a Central Plains Indians. I don't know if they had, and the Potawatomi, they weren't. Neither one of those are the five civilized tribes. I can look it up really quick, but like I said, it was one was the Cherokee, one was the Chickasaw, one were the Creeks, and most of them have been, after the Trail of Tears were pushed over to like lands like Oklahoma, where they currently have reservations. But yeah, it's the Cherokee, the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, the Creek, and the Seminole Indians. The Ojibwe and Potawatomi are, well, I know the Ojibwe are Central Plains Indians, so they weren't considered part of that. And the Potawatomi sounds like a Sounds like one of the tribes from Virginia, if I'm not mistaken. So Nick says, am I left, right, or independent? Well, I'm independent, but you can be independent and still be on the left or the right. I think you meant, am I Democrat or Republican or independent? So I'm independent. I'm not Republican or Democrat, but I have left leanings, but I also have right leanings. Being that I'm independent, I don't have to choose one way to think. And I like it that way. I don't think you can think critically about politics if you're aligned closely with any particular party or any particular political ideology. The closest thing I can say that I have to an actual political ideology, and I've spelled this out in some of my pre-recorded videos, is that I consider myself a classical liberal. And when I say classical liberal, I'm not talking about American liberalism. Classical liberal refers to the European liberals of the Enlightenment and the Age of Reason. So when we talk about people like John Locke, John Stuart Mill, Jeremy Bentham, people like that, people who were closely aligned with the rise of science in the 1600s, 1700s, and the rise of democracy in Europe, and relying on reason over religion, and believing in like personal and economic freedom, religious freedom, stuff like that. Those were the classical liberals. In today's American politics, they would actually be considered on the right. So again, I don't know if I fit cleanly on one side or the other. Pyramid from Pyramid 5 to Project says I'm from I see the Jamaican flag and the British flag. I can't make out the first one. That looks like, I want to say Trinidad and Tobago. I'm not sure. He says, do you think America and the UK bailing out the banks in 2009 was socialism? Corporate socialism. I would call that corporate welfare, but that's not socialism as we know it. They were bailing out private institutions. That's kind of not what we think of as socialism. Socialism would have been just taking over the entire American banking system and making it part of the American government. That would have been socialism. J.A.C says American politics is spilled over to Canada. Everything is so extreme now. I could be anti-gun and deemed far left, but I'm actually more conservative in many ways. So you get my conundrum, J.A.C. It's like my views don't fall squarely on the left or the right, but I identify as a classical liberal. Those basically, those guys who are scientific minded and cared about economic and political and personal freedom, and believed in using reason over reason over ideology or reason over religion. That's where I fall in. And like I said, that where that can be viewed in the American political spectrum depends on the current political environment. So currently, where I sit at as a classical liberal would be considered on the political right in America, whereas like maybe 50, 60 years ago, where I stand would be on the left. So Bonnie says my favorite politician was Ron Paul. Ran his son. I'm so. A lot of people don't like Rand Paul, including even people in the Republican party don't like him. They're both libertarians, but usually they run as Republicans. No, I'm sorry. I think Ron Paul did run for the Libertarian Party when he ran for president, but his son Rand Paul, I think, ran as a Republican as when he ran for president, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry. Nick Ireland says that's a good take on reparations. I've never heard that one before, but yeah, I think that is fair. African tribes did start African trade. Yeah, like I said, start from the top and work our way into it. Like if we're gonna do it, we might as well start with where it began and who profited from it. Like they profited from it. Those kingdoms profited, and then the argument was, well, those kingdoms were absolved when the Europeans established their colonies, which became these modern day nations after they were given their independence in the 60s. It's like, yeah, but everyone agrees, like when it comes to like, you know, uh, politics and government, that the former, like the new government takes over the responsibilities of the former government, right? So same thing. That's why these African republics aren't absolved of the things that the African kingdoms did in the past, because they still benefited from it and they still have the responsibility of those people. So Dennis Neftelberg says, yes, there were Irish slaves more than the blacks. No, there wasn't. You that's complete pseudo history. More than the blacks, sir? That's bullshit. That's just that's patently false. And you failed history if you think that's true. Bonnie says, sorry, Jay, our politics spilling over into Canada. Canada has never been far removed from American politics. I mean, let's be honest. Canada's always been the Robin to America's Batman. So, Jory says, I don't know about Ireland, but over here in Iceland, the weak ones were caught by Ottoman pirates, sometimes for galley slaves or for sexual needs. Dennis says, you're on a plantation, brother. No, I'm not. I'm on this thing called reason. And in reason, we use things like history and science and philosophy and logic. We don't make up pseudo-historical tales to revision history in a way that makes us seem like victims when we weren't. Jari says, I don't like to categorize an entire people in a political group since we all agree and disagree on things. That's fair. Nick says, I agree that trying to fit Republican or Democrat takes away the critical thought on politics. Exactly. That's why, like I said, I became independent 15 years ago. And the only reason I wasn't independent earlier was because there was this thought within the political atmosphere at the time that if you weren't of either of the two parties, then you were a low information voter. Because back then there was this myth going around, propagated by people like CNN and Fox News and MSNBC, that only low information voters are independent, are political independents. Now we know that's far from the truth. It's became more the reverse of that. Jari says politicians tend to use that to stir up things for their own benefit. Of course. Switch to another lo-fi, guys, because this one actually ran out. So, BSK is back. J.A.C says, what do you think about Trudeau and the truckers? Are you familiar with that situation? Yeah, I remember. I forgot exactly what happened, but I remember, again, that was when my thoughts had changed about it. Like back then I was, I guess, against the truckers because American politics made it so that the media made it look like they were the bad guys. But now I'm of a mixed mind about it. BSK says, Thomas, so thoughts? Oh, thoughts. I guess I don't think you mean thoughts. I think you mean thoughts, right? Thoughts and thoughts, two different things. But yeah, I admire Thomas O. I consider him one of those public intellectuals in the true sense of the word. He's had a wide breadth of literature that he's put out and it's been a counter to a lot of the bad information that's come through political misinformation. Nick says there weren't more Irish slaves than black. Yeah, I don't know where that guy's getting that from, Nick. Like, that's just patently false. What is my take on gun rights? So this is one of those classic examples of where I fall both on the right or the left, depending on whether you agree with me or disagree with me. So I actually did a whole video on this, if believe it or not, about a year ago. And this, my take on it is, okay, so when I put on my behavioral research cap, like if I'm thinking like someone who's still like a student in psychology and stuff, I know that, you know, if you make gun control laws, it will bring down crime and gun violence. And I know that people who disproportionately have guns will often die by guns. However, there's a there's a lot of there's a lot of gaps to be filled in that, right? So one of the things is, although people who own guns are more likely to die by guns, that's also the case because a lot of people commit suicide through the use of guns more often than through any other method. Also, although gun control laws do bring down crime and gun violence, is only it depends on how these gun laws are met out, because when you have ones that that are not wide, like if it's not going to be like a national thing, it kind of messes that up. So I live in the state of Maryland, right, and they have some of the most restrictive gun control laws in the country. They also have a gun offender registry. Yes, a gun offender registry in the city of Baltimore. Yet Baltimore is still one of the top cities in the country right now for homicide capital, and it's been like that since the 80s. It's currently sitting somewhere around like number 5, number 6, something like that, with other cities more violent being like St. Louis, places like that. But we're usually always in the top 5 of homicide capitals. But we're the only city in the country that has a gun offender registry. It doesn't work. There's people have to get to legally acquire guns. They have to get things like a handgun qualification license, which they have to pay for and take a class. If they want to get the concealed carry permit, they also have to, take a class and do that. Meanwhile, most of these classes and stuff that you have to pay for are really expensive, and most of them can't be found by citizens within the city. They have to go out to the farther parts of Maryland to do that. But do you think most criminals care about that? Do you think they're acquiring their guns legally? Of course not. So gun control laws only work on people who are already law-abiding citizens. But yeah, I am for gun control, but only if they work on the people that they're supposed to deter. Gun control laws don't deter criminals, they deter law-abiding citizens from owning guns legally. So that's the caveat. So I am in favor of, Second Amendment rights. I don't currently own a weapon, but I am about to, because I'm going to put it in my bug out bag. And I would buy more, but because I plan on moving overseas, there's no point in me collecting a bunch of firearms that I'm then going to have to either sell to like some gun shop or whatever and lose money on it. I might as well just buy those when I go overseas. But I will be buying a pistol for my bug out bag. So that's my thoughts on gun control. If you want to hear it more thought out, you can watch my video after the live stream. What is my opinion on communism? It's a failed idea. I think real world tests over the last 60 years have shown that it doesn't work. First of all, communism being a utopia means it can't really happen anyway. no utopia. Well, utopia can be defined in two ways from the Greek utopos, right? In one definition, it means the good place, and the other definition, it means something that can't be achieved. And that's how it is with most utopian societies like communism. It can never happen because it's supposed to be the final stage of socialism, but socialism never gets that final stage. What happens in every socialist state is that either it devolves into it either it either devolves into a totalitarian state, it becomes a failed it becomes a failed country, or they revert back to being some sort of um, democratic country. But none of them have reached the final stage of communism because it's not an attainable goal, regardless of how 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 nice the writings of people like Karl Marx and Engels have written about it glowingly, or Vladimir Lenin and all of those folks. It's not realistic. So that's my thoughts on it. Oh, sound up. I'm sorry. I'll just speak up. I'm losing my voice. So guys, I'm sorry about that if you couldn't hear me. Brandon says hi, I'm back. Joy Boy Insomniac says hello from Africa. BSK says VD Hansen also solid. Bonnie says, I think everyone I've talked to about politics falls in between both parties. No one has been either or. Yeah, because the truth of the matter is that most people in their day to day are moderates. Some people have extreme views on one and maybe one or two areas, but by and large, most people are moderates. But we don't see the moderates online. We get online, everything is askew because only the most vocal extremes get the most attention. So the Science Well says, what's up, y'all? GJC says, I'm not a fan of guns, but in Toronto, home break-ins are at an all-time high, and the police told the public to just leave your valuables near the front door. Like, what? Wait, what? Hell no. So GJC, that reminds me of, I'm sure you've heard of Steven Pinker, right? The cognitive scientist who works at Harvard, very prominent, psychologist in America. He's a Jewish guy from Canada. He said he used to have, when he was a young college student, he used to have very strong leftist views and was, against, he's against firearms, against law enforcement, all that sort of stuff, until one day, I can't remember if he lived in Toronto or he lived in somewhere in Quebec. I can't remember. It might be Toronto. But in either case, he saw where, like, for like 2 or 3 days, the police were on strike and refused to do anything. And he said that his entire city went to anarchy in just a few hours of the police refusing to do any sort of law enforcement. And he said that changed his whole view on that sort of thing. Joris Durkison says, we got bears over here and big wolves, so I love my shotgun. My grandfather lost 2 fingers because of 2 wolves, but managed to kill them with his shotgun. Those beasts are quicker than you might think. Oh, I know. We had a bear running loose in my neighborhood here last summer. Luckily, it was probably like a cub or a young male bear. So when it saw people, it was a black bear, so it ran away when it saw people. And apparently it made its way across across central Maryland from like where we lived in Baltimore all the way up into like the DC region, like, which is about an hour away, but on foot, or I should say on paw. I'm sure that took several days of that young bear. Lisa says black men in Maryland and DC don't play around, not even a little bit. Jerry says, was a long time ago, though. Haven't seen many attacks by bears unless provoked or with their cubs. Well, that's the scary thing. Once they're, with female bear with their cubs. I don't like being anywhere near wild animals because I like to run outside. So I don't want wild animals in the neighborhood where I like to go for daily runs. or or dogs, which is another conversation. BSK said your channel name just clicked. What do you mean it clicked? Nick says you're moving permanently. Yeah, that's the plan. Back overseas and live with my wife in her home country. Am I into city prepping? So like urban, like I have a one size fits all bug out bag decides well, so I don't kind of distinguish between urban prepping and prepping to be like out in the wilderness. To me, is all one and the same. I have a bug out bag which should last me 72 hours outside of my home. But typically, I would think whether you're going into the wilderness or if you're urban prepping, more than likely you would probably be like in a vehicle, unless it's some sort of natural disaster where you have to be on foot. But primarily, like if you're a prepper or survivalist, I would think your first go-to would be having some sort of vehicle you could bug out in, a bug out vehicle, and you will keep extra munitions and food and stuff within that vehicle stocked. It will only the last ditch effort would be where you would have to go it on foot with your bag. And whether in the city or in the wilderness, it would pretty much be sort of the same. The only difference is if you were urban, like if you were bugging out within a city as opposed to like within the wilderness or in some rural setting, you wouldn't have as much recourse for finding like food and water, which is why so I'll show some of that stuff in my bag. So you should definitely have some food preparations in your bag just to last you within 3 days. You don't have to eat a lot to survive within 3 days. So have some food, have have something to have ways to attain water and to have clean water, and also start a fire. So those are three important things to have as part of your bug out bag, whether you're urban prepping or whether you're a survivalist in the wilderness. So Brandon says, I think you are the best YouTuber. Thank you. I really don't think I'm the best. Maybe one day, but there's so many other better folks on here than me that do it better. They sometimes they talk from a script instead of ad-libbing like I do. But I appreciate it a lot. Thank you. BSK says this partly explains why you pick apart pragmatism, etc. Yeah, I'm pedantic. Like if someone ever studied philosophy, BSK, you have to make distinctions, and sometimes you have to make distinctions within distinctions. Then at the same time, you have to know when some distinctions aren't worth making. that is the thought space of doing philosophy. Nick Ireland says, I respect how much research you've done. Appreciate it. Thank you. Autism awareness says, you talk way too much. Bro stays on one comment for 30 minutes. I give due attention to the comments given. If you don't like that, then you can go somewhere else. Maybe autism doesn't allow you to see that. And since you're making little homo comments, you're banned. I don't care about, I'm not dealing, like I said in the beginning of the stream, I'm not dealing with people who have mental health issues. Like, go find help somewhere else. You won't get it here. I purposely, when I went to psychology, stopped focusing on psychopathology just because I don't want to deal with people with their mental health problems. I have my own problems. I'm not dealing with others. Nick said the point of his channel is to talk like what? Right. Decides well says, what Armageddon would y'all rather have happen? Zombie apocalypse or power grid shutdown? Well, so I don't. Have you ever seen Doomsday Preppers, guys? Well, Doomsday Preppers. Every nutball had like their own Doomsday scenario come out, and what used to make what was so laughable about Doomsday Preppers. Well, several things was funny about Doomsday Preppers. Like mostly they were all, not all, but most of them were like these right wing extremists, right? Then other ones were like mostly old fat people, and I'm like, as your first mission as a prepper and within the prepper community or as a survivalist, um, you should be getting in shape. You should physical fitness should be your first part of prepping or being a survivalist. Is staying same thing when I talk about self defense. The first half of self defense, just like with prepping and survivalism, is to be in physical fit shape. Because if you're not physically fit, none of the other things are going to fall in line. But all of these people are like fat and old. I'm not gonna hold being old against them, but it seemed like if you made it through 60, 70 plus years of life, now all of a sudden you're afraid that everything's gonna, now you're afraid the sky is gonna fall. And people had different fears. What if the power grid goes down? What if there's a global EMP? What if there's World War III? Um, what if there's a attack by some foreign country? What if, and somebody, one person said, what if the Earth's magnetic poles flip? All sorts of zany stuff like that. Some of the more realistic ones were like, what if there's economic crisis? What about a natural disaster? Natural disasters are the most common reason someone might have for to bug out or have to use their prepping skills. Most Armageddons are by definition fanciful, or as far as which one I would pick, I mean, the zombie apocalypse would be easy to fend against. Like, first of all, zombies are a biological impossibility, but let's say that some sort of ailment close to zombieism was affected people, like how you see people high as shit off of fentanyl and other opioids. They would be pretty easy to kill. So I would choose that. I can fend that off easily. I can I can punch you, I can kick you, I can shoot you, I can stab you, all pretty easily, especially when you're like zombied out. Power grid would suck. I could deal with that though. Living without, you know, electricity and stuff like that. People can quickly adapt to like a pre a pre 20th century sort of civilization. That wouldn't be that bad. Like some of the other ones could be much worse, like a nuclear fallout or whatever. So choose your poison. Like, but zombie apocalypse would be easy to deal with because, like I said, anything resembling a zombie would be pretty easy to deal with, in my opinion. Sauce Wave guy says you need some tea. I just need some water. I do have some. Bonnie says, I've met someone from the former USSR. I was shocked by the information he told us that was kept from US citizens, so no thank you on communism. I agree. And like I said, the USSR never reached communism. There's never been in the history of the world a socialist state that made the final stage to communism. I think the problem is people confuse socialism and communism as the same thing. They're not. Some of these places say that they're communist, but they aren't, because communism, as defined by Engels and Marx, was the final stage of political evolution to them. Like you started off, you start off in a state of anarchy or chaos, then you go to like tribal communities and chiefdoms and stuff like that. Then you finally go into kingdoms and empires, and then from there you go to these mercantile and capitalistic societies, and then supposedly then you go to then there's like a revolution, which then turns into like socialism, and then finally, once socialism has been done correctly, it ends up in the final stage of communism. It's never happened, and it never will happen. What do you call a happy cowboy, Jolly Rancher? GJC says, gotta head out, but love these streams and looking forward to the next one. Cheers. Thanks, GJC. Appreciate it. And I appreciate that we can disagree about stuff and still be amicable about it. Mind Bender says, pray for me. I'll run it in the Special Olympics this weekend. I don't know about that. Brandon Gonzalez, is that a fiery comet? So that's your chosen, I hope that's not your chosen Armageddon, because no one can escape that one, really. Some sort of comet or meteor that hits the Earth the way it wiped out the dinosaurs during a Jurassic extinction. By the way, in case people don't know, the world has already suffered 5 mass extinctions. The dinosaurs were just one of them, but they weren't the only one. I think the first one was the Permian extinction. Bonnie says, I would move out of here if I had young children. Well, I'm planning to leave here before I have children, because I don't want my kids growing up in the American public school system where they're going to get confused about what's a boy and a girl, among other things. Brandon says, nah, you are so nice, bro. You're the best. Seriously, I appreciate it. Thank you. Nick says, water is the key to good physical and mental health. True. I don't drink enough of it, to be honest. Especially when I run. So I know that when I run, my 10K runs, every time I do a 10K run, I should be looking at replacing about 1 liter of fluid in my body. No Diddy, in case someone tries to make a joke. Bonnie says, be prepared if the power grid goes down in your area. I'm surprised people don't have items on hand if the power goes out, or find an Amish village. You're assuming the Amish will want people. I'm pretty sure the Amish, the Quakers, the Hutterites probably would not want a bunch of random Westerners coming into their societies. And I wouldn't blame them. Again, I'm prepared if the power grid shuts down. Like I said, I can live in early 1900 type lifestyle. As long as I have my family, my wife, I'm good. We can make do. I stayed in shape so I can chop wood, right? All that sort of stuff. My family has a old style country house in Virginia. Well, actually, scratch that. We had one. My father modernized it, so it no longer has the old kitchen stove that heats up the whole house. He now has like HVAC in it. But I can make do. For a lot of people who couldn't survive without internet and all that, they're doomed. Generation Z. Eric is back. He says the most likely cause of an apocalyptic event is when the global supply chain completely dissolves for whatever reason. Nations go into resource hoarding and martial law. So like I said, the biggest reason people will ever have to like bug out and use their prepping skills is usually natural disasters. And the most common, as I think described by FEMA, has usually been like wildfires and flooding. Those are usually the 2 biggest reasons that you might have to bug out of your home and seek a safer location. But all the more wilder Armageddons that people have conceived of are unlikely, like some celestial object hitting the Earth. Like there's a whole branch of NASA and the military that studies NEOs, or near Earth objects that can possibly hit the Earth, and have classified them by their level of danger in hitting the Earth. And that's an ongoing process. As far as the Earth flipping its magnetic poles, even if that does happen, there's no evidence that would cause widespread chaos. The Earth has flipped poles in the past, but that was like, I believe, like, I don't know, like I don't know, like 500, 600,000 years ago. Um, Obviously, they didn't cause any mass extinction at that time. We're actually according to a lot of scientists today, we're actually living through a current mass extinction. Except this time, this mass extinction of animals is being caused by human intervention. What do you like better, Takis or Cheetos? I only tried Takis once and I didn't like them, so I like Cheetos, but only the regular Cheetos, not the fire Cheetos the kids are eating. Like my niece and nephew eat those, and I start making jokes. The only ghetto people feed their kids those hot fire Cheetos. But the Takis don't taste well to me. The science well says Eric. That's what I meant. I guess mass chaos. Brandon says kaboom. The science well says the flood was one. No, mass extinction on the earth. If you talking about the biblical flood, that hasn't been proven. What And actually, the biblical flood is based on an earlier myth coming out of the Sumerian. The first known, actually, I think the first known book ever written is the epic poem of Gilgamesh, and that the mythical city of the Sumerian city of was flooded. That's where the myth of the Noah's flood comes from an earlier tale from Sumerian storytelling coming out of the book of Gilgamesh. So I don't believe that ever happened. I think that was purely myth, since it was already plagiarized from an earlier story. Let me look that up really quick. Yeah, in myth and literature, Uruk was famous as the capital city of Gilgamesh, hero of the Epic of Gilgamesh. Scholars identify Uruk as the biblical Erech from Genesis, book 10, verses 10, the second city founded by Nimrod and Shinar. No, I'm wrong. I'm confusing two different places, but they do take place in what was supposed to be in the Epic of Gilgamesh, which was the first book I think ever written in history. And I think that was supposed to happen on the banks of the Euphrates River. But yeah, that's where the Noah flood came from. But anyway, yeah, I don't think that ever happened. But I mean, just local floods like we see here in America, like almost every year, the Mississippi River Delta floods. So people who live there often lose their houses, or like people who live along the coast of the Gulf of Mexico, within like say Louisiana and Florida and Alabama, often lose their houses during flooding during hurricane season, which is in the fall. So floods can be quite common. Wildfires have become more common now, like in California. Then we had one on the East Coast last year that started in Canada, but it was the wildfire was so widespread that even down here in Baltimore and DC, we were getting warnings about smoke inhalation coming from the wildfire all the way up in Canada, which was like 5-6 hours away. So those can be very common reasons where you might have to bug out of your home. So everyone should have some sort of bug out bag or emergency kit. Eric Roger says to decides, well, yep, that or the internet goes down and kills the economy just the same. It will be hard for the internet to go down because it's not one thing in one location. There's a bunch of different the internet is made of like hundreds of mega servers distributed across the world. So to take out, it would be hard to take out the entire internet unless all the power got shut down. Um, but yeah, I think I was right. I think Gilgamesh was considered like the first book written. And that was written 4,000 years ago, guys. So human ingenuity. Anyway, uh, Jory says, I could never leave my country. My ancestors have been here since the 900s. Whether I die or not, my kid must decide on his own if he wants to go. I can never. I can place. Sorry, looks like we just reconnected. I hope everyone's still here. But to answer Jari, I can never be just tethered to one country. I've traveled too much to see myself as only tied to one place forever. Like I'm not bound to any place. That probably stems from the fact that I used to move a lot as a child from one place to another, so I never felt tethered to one place long enough. So I lived in Maryland for a long time. Then I lived in Chicago as a kid. Then I moved to other places like Pennsylvania and Delaware, the DC suburbs. Then I lived overseas for a little bit. And I've been in the army. So because of, I guess, my experiences moving a lot, I never felt like I can only be in one place forever. Jerry says, in Iceland, you could easily freeze to death in winter if you don't know how to stay warm. I thought Iceland wasn't as bad as, say, like Greenland, which is, I know Greenland isn't part of Europe. It's part of Canada, but similar in some ways. I know Greenland is a pretty bitter place to live. Brandon says you should try the blue Takis. I don't like those sort of things. When it comes to junk food, I'm very particular. Brandon says gotta go though, so thanks again for joining us, Brandon. If you're still here to hear me. Jerry says Iceland is basically a big volcano. You also need to watch out for avalanches and wild animals, but at least no big spiders. Eric, the other Eric is back. Eric the Guapo. He says hello. What's up, Eric? So I got both Erics in the house. We need the third Eric to come in. Jerry says talking about floods. Did you see the Dubai one? No, I haven't. I haven't even heard about it actually. And I have friends who live there. I have a ex-Filipina girlfriend who lives there. My current wife, she has friends who live there. But I haven't heard anything about a flood. Derek Roca says the uncomfortable realization is that a good chunk of the population is not fit to survive without modern means. A lot of people have modern skills and knowledge that are useless to immediate survival. It's true. Plus, some people just don't know what to do in the face of danger. That's the other big thing. Like I've seen people freak out and or to like mild things like during the pandemic. You remember how fearful some people looked during the pandemic? And only thing they were asking people to do is, hey, stay at home. And people were freaking out like, oh, like all they told you to do is stay home, watch TV, watch Netflix, play video games. People were acting like the world was coming to a freaking end. And it was largely because the things were being reported poorly in the media, especially with that little asshole Anthony Fauci was making people believe that anyone could catch this disease and die from it, where the truth of the matter is, even though a lot of people might catch it, for most people who don't have a pre-existing health condition, including obesity, which a lot of people who died had, if you didn't have pre-existing health conditions, if you weren't morbidly obese, even if you caught it, it would be like a bad flu, and that's about it. You weren't going to die from it. But they tried to trick people into believing that, oh, this can kill anyone, even healthy children. Like, yeah, okay. So everyone's freaking out about that. Or just like if you've ever ridden public transportation and you see how crowded it gets, and you see how some people can't deal with the congestion. I'm like, and I'm looking at these people like on a train or sometimes at bus stations, and I'm like, man, all these people would die if there was some sort of emergency situation going on because they don't know how to they don't know how to think. So a lot of people, like I've told my wife and others, I said, a lot of people just died during an emergency just because they would just be stuck in a rut mentally, like they wouldn't know how to react. uh Eric the Guapo says this year in Cali, fire season is going to be intense because of all the rain we got. Yeah, like I said, wildfires is a huge reason why people might have to bug out. You guys remember last year what happened in Hawaii? So that was a clear situation of when you needed to bug out and use your prepping skills, because the government was held liable because they told those people, stay where you are and help will come to you. And guess what? Most of the people who didn't follow the Hawaiian government's advice and decided to leave their homes to get away from the wildfires, they survived. It was the people who decided to stay at home that got cooked alive in their houses as the wildfires spread, and there wasn't a big enough emergency response to stop the fires before these people were completely trapped in their homes. So the people who bugged out early were the ones who survived. Eric Roker says to answer the internet going down at once, look up solar storms. It's very possible just an EMP at a global scale. So yeah, that's one of the things that a lot of preppers worry about is global EMPs, but I don't think so, because EMPs aren't going to really take out the entire power grid or the internet. I think a lot of people don't understand how EMPs are, and as far as it being from a solar flare, this would you would have to be talking about a mega solar flare, and there's no reason to believe that we'll encounter some sort of mega solar flare that can cause an EMP on a global scale. There are solar flares, and they do affect our satellites sometimes, and or like solar storms, like you mentioned, that can affect our equipment, but not not on a level that it would cause like widespread like shutdown of all electrical devices. I I think that's more dubious. Jerry says Dubai floods are next level. Next level. Oh, I didn't know it was that bad. The funny thing is, when I think of Dubai, I just think of the desert. So I'm like, where are they getting flooding from? Is Dubai like right? Is Dubai on the Mediterranean Sea itself? Because otherwise, I'm confused where a place in the desert would get flooded. But some of you guys are mentioning it, so I guess this was a serious thing. I might have to look into the people who live there, make sure they're okay. Nick Island says, "Do you believe the government has direct influence on weather?" Well, the government and military have been long trying to experiment with uh, controlling the weather with limited effectiveness. Such as like so-called like seeding the clouds to produce more rain, um, and other sorts of things that they do. But I'm not sure how how much the government can control that, because if so, we might use that more to our advantage when it comes to our agriculture, as well as, of course, if they could control weather a lot, then you can weaponize it too. And that's some of the research and development in the military that they're doing right now with controlling the weather. Is not just for agricultural purposes, but also for weaponizing it, right? So, as far as I know, they're not that far advanced in being able to manipulate the weather to weaponize it. Have I had the COVID vax? I got COVID for 2 weeks and I was fine. Yeah, I got the vax um, 3 times. The first two, and then I got the third one that they recommended. I didn't get the fourth one, but by the time they recommended the fourth one, most people didn't care anymore about still getting injections, except for like people way off on the left that believed everything Biden and Fauci said. I had got 3 jabs, and I thought that was sufficient. Plus, I'm in good physical shape, and I don't have any pre-existing health conditions. Well, I have a dietary condition, PKU, but that has nothing to do with like respiratory or metabolic processes. So I was fine, even if I did catch it without being vaccinated. I know that it wouldn't have been serious. I mostly got vaccinated to protect people around me because the power of vaccinations is a public health effect where the people who are healthy get vaccinated so that those who are less healthy within their circle can be protected. That's how it's supposed to work. But they lied and made it seem like people who took it themselves wouldn't catch the the virus, and that's not how it works. You can still catch it even though you're vaccinated. But what it does is your symptoms will be less severe for you, and it will prevent you from passing it on to other people. So it was a public health effort. But if they had been more honest and said that instead of trying to promote it as some sort of miracle cure, then people might not have thought it as being so dubious. Bonnie says, I wish I could have stayed home at the beginning of the pandemic. I had to work and saw the worst in people and customers. I did stress out a bit, but I had a coworker who got me to think. I don't know. 2020 was, I'm not going to lie, it was kind of fun. Seeing people freak out was kind of funny. I know that's kind of sadistic, but I'm so I think so some of you who lived in Europe and Africa and places can probably won't be able to identify with what I'm talking about with Bonnie here, but 2020 was hilarious. Like when you went in like early 2021, like when you went to the supermarkets and people were just wearing all sorts of weird shit on their face that they considered a mask. Like people had like socks around their mouth. I seen people wearing full military NBC gas mask. NBC stands for nuclear biological chemical. uh, um, those sort of tactical gas masks. Others were just wearing like the gas mask you get at a hardware store so you don't choke on dust when you like it was just hilarious. People just had bandanas. It was a funny time. It was funny. A lot of the single women were flipping out because they realized the whole lie that was taught to them by feminists that they don't need men. um, like I said, the pandemic wasn't even that serious, but it was like a just horror in some of these single women that were going to the supermarkets by themselves. And the if you did have to work outside of the home, the roads were clear. There was no traffic jams during the pandemic. That was great. Got to actually get places on time and early because the roads are relatively clear was the best. So I didn't mind actually working outside of the home. I actually eventually got to work from home because of the pandemic. But initially I could have worked from home or still went to my office, and it was fine. The only reason I didn't want to go to the office at the time is again because I believed all the lies coming out of Fauci and people, in certain parts of the government making it seem like everyone is going to be in danger of catching COVID and going to put their life their life on the line or put their family's life on the line, and it just simply wasn't true. And you couldn't say anything at the time because anyone who said that was considered a conspiracy theorist. If you said something online, it would get blocked. You might get, you know, shadow banned or put in a Facebook jail. If you were a YouTuber at the time, which I wasn't, you could see those videos getting demonetized, and if you kept going, they might have just deplatformed you. It it was it was interesting. Jerry says whether you admit it or not, they made it rain artificially and admitted it. Well, like I said, there's been projects to seed rain clouds for a long time, but like I said, it's not the technology. That sort of climate technology is not at the level now where it can be really used. It can really be weaponized at this point. I didn't say they couldn't do it. I'm just saying it's not. It's not. It's more art than science at this point. So that's all I'm saying about it. The science will says gotta bounce. Y'all be safe. All right. Oh, the science will says actually got another question. Your thoughts on machine learning? Well, if you talk about, I mean, first weak AI versus strong AI. Um. Well, we have weak AI at this point, and it is, it's already having its effects on society because people who are computer illiterate, especially older people, let's be honest, baby boomers and silent generation, really can't tell when they're being fooled by generative AI art online. They believe every little thing they see on Facebook. Like every time, like how many times has someone had their uncle or auntie like share something on Facebook thinking this is real? Like say the little military robot that's doing all this sort of infantry stuff, and that's just generative AI. Or when they see a politician saying something completely out of pocket, and that's generative AI. Or the fact that people in school are using GPT chat to do their papers for them. But as far as strong AI, I'm not too worried about it yet, because to get to strong AI, we have to have a better conception of how the mind works than what we currently do. There's a type of reasoning that machines just can't do yet. Um, we we call it like abductive reasoning or inferencing or reasons or inference to the best explanation. It's not something we can really replicate through formal programming just yet, because inference to the best explanation, or abductive reasoning, if you will, is a type of reasoning where the premises don't lead you to the conclusion that you reach. It's a jump. There's a cognitive jump or inference to the best explanation, that there's a mental gap that it crosses that we can't explain, and because we don't know how to explain it, or we can't replicate it in machines. And it's one of the most basic ways that humans reason, but it's not something that we can yet replicate in machines. Till we can get past that sort of barrier and some related things, and this is called the human AI problem, then I wouldn't be worried about strong AI anytime soon. Eric Rokas is another fun, quote unquote, apocalypse scenario is artificial tsunamis caused through the detonation of enough nuclear warheads near the seabed next to a coast. Well, one possibility, and it's a remote possibility though, is that the the east coast of the United States could suffer from a mega tsunami if there was ever if the volcano located off of Cape Verde ever exploded. It could the tidal effects could cause a mega tsunami which hits the east coast, but it's a very remote possibility. So it wouldn't be an artificial tsunami, it would be the real thing. It would be it would be a mega tsunami caused by natural causes, because there's, I think, a super volcano located within under the surface of Cape Verde. I mean, in the sea. If it went off, it would cause this tidal tidal forces to release a mega tsunami onto the eastern coast of the United States. That would be scary. Uh, Jerry says in 2020, I was more afraid of wiping my butt with vines and leaves because all the grandmas bought 100 rolls of toilet paper than COVID. To be really honest, I was never sick of or had COVID once. Yep. Zero COVID crew here. 2024 still hadn't had that shit. the, actually, the fact of the matter is, there was probably a lot of people who got COVID who never knew it because they never had symptoms. Again, that was another problem. Like, not everyone who caught it even had symptoms. Like, a lot of us may have caught it and just never known because we were completely asymptomatic. But as far as I know, I never caught it. So I'm just gonna say, unless I was actually unless it was actually diagnosed, I never had it. But yeah, as far as buying up all the toilet tissue and people freaking out in the supermarket, like I said, it was funny. And because I learned the Filipino way of cleaning yourself in the bathroom, I wasn't worried about it because I know how to use the tapo method. If I have any Filipinos in the audience, y'all can tell them what the tapo is. The bathroom bucket that's used either in showers or to rinse yourself off after you use the bathroom. Use the toilet, where instead of, they don't use toilet paper, they get soap, scrub up, and then use the bathroom bucket, the tapo, to rinse off afterwards, and then dry themselves off with a towel. It's cleaner than the toilet, which is why the women are fresher and have fresher nether regions in Southeast Asia and in other parts of Asia than in Europe and America, because they actually wash their nether regions every time they use the bathroom. Even my Persian friend, when I was in college, she used to walk around with like a squeeze bottle so that she could wash herself every time she used the bathroom. Because it was funny, because one of her friends went to go drink water out the bottle until she told him what it was for, and then he like spit the water out. But it just, they keep it fresh there. That's another reason why we love Asian women. They're fresher in other regions than other women. But that's a story for another day. Bonnie says, I saw a guy wearing scuba gear at my work during the pandemic. We laughed for a week. I believe it. But Bonnie, I went for a run and this guy was wearing a tactical gas mask. Now, if I was charitable, I would say maybe he was just testing it out. But nah, he was definitely doing that because he was terrified of COVID. Like, you had people wearing gas masks driving in the car by themselves because they were so scared of COVID. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Y'all gotta be kidding me. Like, what are you gonna catch COVID from yourself? People were crazy. Yeah, I saw someone wearing a scuba mask in a supermarket back then. I definitely did. Like I said, I saw one person, like, like I saw some people just putting bandanas and like tying it across their mouth and all sorts of stuff, and it was just crazy. Then remember when Fauci didn't say we should be wearing two masks, and I stupidly did that, so I would wear like a cloth mask over top of N95 mask, and that was just so unnecessary at the time. Eric Rogan says, I remember during COVID, people panic buying gas and filling plastic bags. Oh yeah, I remember the people filling plastic bags of gasoline. Yo, that was crazy. I remember that. I remember that. Jerry said they said it was an accident. Bonnie says, I got lucky. I had Dr. McCullough who came through my work and talked to me. He was one who got banned off of YouTube. Yeah, a bunch of YouTubers got banned at the time because if you said anything that contradicted the main message being put out, by the government at the time through Fauci and Biden, you would consider conspiracy theorists and you would get deplatformed. And now we later found out that the government was actually coming after social media networks and telling them that they must only let people put information out that they agree that fit their message. That they were actually telling Facebook, Google, YouTube, that they needed to stick to the message the government was putting out. So that makes us not trust the government when they do stuff like that, when they manage the news that way. Pokerman says hello everybody. What's up, Pokerman? What's up? Nick says I wasn't worried because I used wet wipes and there was plenty. those were sold out too back then, Nick. I don't know, like maybe where you live, but like toilet tissues, wet wipes, all this stuff was crazy expensive. I remember when they first started telling people they needed to buy the N95 masks, they were none to buy, so you had to go. People were driving like an hour away just to go to a store where they were selling the surgical mask. There was people overseas, especially in China, they were selling the mask to Americans here, because that's how I befriended this Chinese girl, because she got on I forgot whether it was on Facebook or somewhere, but she got on there and was advertising that she was selling these masks, and I asked her how much and stuff. But yeah, they had plenty of those. They had plenty of that stuff overseas, and China was not trying to give up their medical supplies at the time. So Jari says hashtag toilet paper crew. Eric Rogan says, have you ever used the 3 shells to wipe? Not sure if you get the reference of that. I think they just did a article. I don't know if it was IGN or something, but I think they said they finally released an article explaining the 3 shells on Demolition Man. It's still a funny thing to this day. Like, that movie came out like 1996, 1997, and people still talk about that. It's like, oh, but he doesn't know how to use the 3 shells. He's like, I don't need your 3 shells. It just kept cussing, so he kept getting demerits and used it to wipe his butt. That was funny. But now I'll just use a bathroom bucket. I ain't need toilet paper. Bar soap, and toilet bucket are tapo, as they're known in the Philippines, but they have them everywhere. Like, it's a Japanese shower bucket, but they have different names for them in all over Asia where they use them. But in the Philippines, it's called a tapo, and there's a Filipino musician who actually made a whole music video about it, which is hilarious. Or if you guys know that corny comedian, the guy who hosted the awards last year, and they savaged him for not being funny because he made a joke about Taylor Swift, and the whole Taylor Swift army, the Swifties, went after him for making a joke about her, even though the joke was so tame that it wasn't even funny. Like, he would have been better off trying to be more rude about the joke, because then it would have been funny. I forgot the name of that guy. He's Joe Coy. That's his name, Joe Coy. He's done several stand-ups talking about the tapo and why it makes Philippine women more cleaner than American women. Gold Touch D said all a scam. Yeah. Jerry says I once had to use 2 papers for 7 white. Ew. And had the 5th Symphony of Beethoven playing in my head. That could have been kept private. Gold Touch D says people were ridiculous. I remember my buddy getting a ride home from the cops after he stole beer from the gas station. At least they didn't arrest him. I mean, think about it. Like, if the worst scenario is you get caught stealing beer and they give you a ride home, it ain't that bad. It would have been better than book. That would have been better than arresting them. Jacksonville Kids says thoughts on when artificial intelligence is more advanced and replaces millions of Homo sapiens in the workplace. What do you think the Homo sapiens will do for income? Why you say Homo sapiens? That's weird. But to answer your question, I mean, we already see it currently happening. So most of the service industry is going to be most people in the service industry are going to be replaced by robots. We already see it in fast food. Like you go to your local McDonald's and now you don't even have to interact with a person until you like actually pick up your food. Like you can, instead of going to the service desk and tell them what you want to order, you can just go to the you can just go to the the little menu board, get what you want. And the funny thing is, the the artificial menu is usually more um, precise in getting your sandwiches correct than people are, because like people want to customize the sandwich. They'll say, well, I want a Big Mac, no cheese, um, add bacon, um, extra pickles, whatever. The When you do it through the artificial menu, they usually tend to get your order more correct than when you give it to a person. Like I said, and then you can pay right from the machine. So the only time you interact with a person is when they just bring your food in a bag up to the desk for you to pick it up. Same thing with the drive-through. You have automatic drive-through menus, and then in the grocery stores, you have self-checkout now. So in a lot of service industry and the retail world, particularly, it's getting to the point where you won't have to act or interact with a person. So they're gonna lose out on jobs that way. Then they're trying to create self-driving automobiles. So far, most of them are kind of flawed, but they're gonna work out those kinks eventually, where most of the ride share apps are gonna have like automatic driving, like Uber and all of them. They're testing it, and once they do that with the rideshare apps, they're going to do it with truck driving too. They want to automate the truck driving. That's going to put a lot of people out of work, but it's going to save these corporations billions of dollars if they can automate the big tractor trailers and stuff like that. So largely the service industry is going to be the biggest calamity because of AI. Um, Ironically, it's going to be jobs within what's been considered the liberal arts that are going to be the most resistant to AI. So for all the people who made fun of kids going into liberal arts degrees and stuff, those are going to be the jobs that survive when a lot of jobs get automated. Um, so that's my word. I guess that's my 2 cents on that. Jerry Sturgeson says tough life, mass starvation, and nuclear war. Jacksonville Kid says the more you fear, the more you consume. Nick Allen says, I'm so glad I worked in warehouse and they didn't require masks. I'm surprised. Bonnie says, I bought a fake mask, so to say. Thin, looked like a regular mask so I could breathe. Well, remember at the time, they kept changing their ideas on masks. So at one point, Fauci said that you could wear any mask, it doesn't matter, and they'll offer a level of protection. We know that's bullshit now. Those cloth masks were just theatrics. Like, cloth masks offer no protection outside of maybe like protecting people from you coughing on them. But other than that, it wasn't stopping the flow of viruses, which are smaller than the the clothing material that make up those masks. Jerry said it was a grave situation and a regretful moment. Yeah. One thing I saw out of it, at least I continued to run every day, because Maryland wasn't one of those places like California and New York City where they were telling people to stay inside and they couldn't go out and go run and stuff. Like I seen in places like California and New York City, which was crazy. Like the worst thing to tell people is they can't go out and get fresh air, which was like one of the best things you could do when dealing with people who are closely confined into a space where they might be sharing each other germs. Just letting them go out and get fresh air. You're not going to pass on germs while you're jogging, especially when you're not jogging like with other people, unless you're like in a race. But that was ridiculous. And I saw a lot of other people in my community. That was the most I ever seen people jogging in my neighborhood, was during the 2020 2021, because everyone was stuck inside and wanted to do something. So people were just putting on some sneakers and going for a run. I loved it. So I wish people kept that habit after 2021. Bonnie says a lot of grocery stores are getting rid of self checkout because of theft, and until current laws change on theft. That's true. The 2 days ago when I went grocery shopping, all the self checkout was shut down. They said it would. I don't know if they were doing maintenance or whatever, but all the self checkout was closed. So we had to go through checkout, and then they opened up an extra line. And I saw some people like freaking out, like people people hate long lines, but being a nerd, I always have either something on my phone to read, or I actually bring a physical book with me whenever I go out somewhere. So I'm never like just stuck doing nothing for a long amount of time. Eric says, I don't eat McDonald's anymore. It's just overworked teens, especially at night. At least where I'm at, 2 months ago, I ordered a hamburger meal and it was fucking raw. Gordon Ramsay voice, not worth $12. I don't, well, where I live, I mean, there's still teens that work at McDonald's, but there's a lot of adults that work in fast food now to make ends meet. Like the whole McJob being something for teenagers, I think died out in the 2000s, because after economic recession, we just see a lot of adults working full time in these fast food restaurants, which used to be mostly staffed by teenagers. So my first official job was at a Burger King. Florida wall? Well, not in Florida, and that's a curtain, not a wall. So there's a window behind this. So I don't know what a Florida wall is, but not in Florida, and it's not a wall. It's a curtain covering a window. Yeah, I've heard McDonald's is paying pretty well in some places. Someone I know in Iowa told me the same thing. She was saying, well, her current job working with people like, I think like juvenile delinquents and people and kids who have like severe mental health problems, she was getting paid about as much as the people at McDonald's. And I'm like, well, then you made the wrong choice. You'd have had less stress working at McDonald's than working with these problematic kids. So, I mean, if they paid this well here in Maryland, I would do it. Because for one, I like the food. And two, it would be it would be doing lead generation. Sometimes lead generation is very frustrating. Like I said, unless I start doing this, like social, being a content creator full time. So the troll, I'm not even responding to that, especially since you don't even have a YouTube handle. So I'm just guaranteed you're a troll. It's just I'm debating whether to ban you outright now or wait till you say something stupid as a follow up to ban you. But anyway, guys, this was originally about politics. I really thought people were going to talk that talk when it comes to like Trump and Biden, but we got off that. It seems whenever people bring up stuff for topic of discussion, then when I actually do make it a whole stream about it, they're nowhere to be found to lead the conversation. Like when I said I'm gonna open this up to talking about Trump and Biden, the election, and politics, I thought we were gonna get much more push in that direction with people debating back and forth who's the better candidate, who sucks, if both suck, if we're all just doomed or whatever. But um, it didn't really go that way, which is fine. I'll probably do this discussion again because inevitably people are going to want to talk about politics again. So I will do it again, but not this week. Um, Nick says I like Trump, but there are a few things I disagree with. Yeah, I mean that's fair. I don't think any critical thinking person would think that everything is gold about either candidate of their choice, if they even have a candidate of their choice. I support Trump, and I outlined, about 2 hours ago why. So I'm not going to go back over that again right now. But if somebody else wanted to voice their concerns with it, that's fine. But I'm about to end this, guys. I appreciate, everyone talking. Like I said, we'll do another political discussion about the election and stuff like that. I think this turned into why we all hated the pandemic. Then we got into a debate about reparations and slavery, which shouldn't be reparations. I get, but slavery should not have been really a topic of current politics, since we're talking about something from over 200 years ago. Like, to still be bringing up stuff about that seemed kind of irrelevant. But hopefully the next time we talk politics on the live stream, we're going to keep it more to current topics, like whether we think Trump's going to get convicted, and if so, what would be the punishment, if any. Bonnie says, what do I think of Noam Chomsky? To be honest, I don't know too much about his politics, although that I know he's on the radical left. He calls himself a anarcho-socialist, something like that. He calls himself some sort of anarcho-socialist or something like that. I forgot exactly the term that he uses, but I know he's on the radical left, and he has a strong belief in political freedom to the point that he doesn't think we need government. Other than that, I follow him because of his views on cognitive science. He's considered one of the founders of cognitive science, so he's important to me in that thing. And that, I've also studied linguistics, and he's pretty much the founder of scientific linguistics as well. So in that vein, I would agree with him on that. I agree with his takedown of behaviorism and within psychology, which was the research program up until the early 60s, that psychology can only be scientifically done by looking at direct behaviors and not by looking at mental processes or things like that. He kind of defeated that idea. He also, became the founder of modern linguistics because he showed how language learning is innate. So I guess that's pretty much all I have to say about Noam Chomsky. Like I said, I don't know as much about his politics, but I'm definitely not in favor of them. I think they're kind of radical. He does do some interesting analyses of how American foreign policy has been detrimental to other parts of the world. But thanks, Bonnie. I appreciate it. Nick also says, peace out, man. I'm glad I found your channel. Next time I'll have something more to say. My brain was in a bit of a fog tonight. This has been a great talk. Thank you. Appreciate it. Eric says, did you ever read Ayn Rand on your psychology or philosophy courses? No. In philosophy, both, the funny thing is, people in the analytic philosophy and continental philosophy don't agree on very many things. But one of the few things that both people who teach analytical philosophy and people who teach continental philosophy agree is that Ayn Rand is pseudo philosophy. Like, no one considers what she does actual philosophy. We all consider her basically a bullshit artist when it comes to philosophy. So, yeah, so I've read her book Atlas Shrugged, but I didn't read that as philosophy. I just read that as like a work of literature. I never took it seriously as philosophy. Like, she took like, I think like one course in philosophy when she was in college in Russia. She's not a philosophical minded person, and her whole uh, philosophy that she created called objectivism, no one takes seriously. Who you won't find any philosophy professor who takes what she says seriously as philosophy. She's more she's more of one of those people they push into reading and literature courses. Like, it's a running joke, in colleges that all the worst theories are put into English literature. So things like psychoanalysis and Ayn Rand and pseudo history and other sorts of sketchy ideas all become the fodder of English literature because they're rejected in the actual departments where serious work is being done. I finally know who David Goggins is, so I guess I can take that as a compliment because the guy's an ultra marathoner and a former Navy SEAL operative, so operator that is. So I take that as a compliment. I wish I was half as accomplished as that guy is when I just briefly looked at some of his things that he's done. Anyway, I'm gonna go, guys. I appreciate everyone talking with me again. This topic was about politics. If you missed it, this will be uploaded within once I end this. And other than that, I appreciate the talk from the folks who were on. And I am out again. You can catch this once it's uploaded to the channel. For those who haven't already, please like, share, subscribe to the channel, hit your notifications so you know when I'm uploading more content. Uh, that's pretty much it. And if you guys have any questions or comments after this is uploaded, you can leave it in the comment section so you can see it. All right. So I appreciate it, guys. Thanks, Eric. Talk to you guys later.